Hello, it's Saturday the 13th of February. You're tuned in to our 6 p.m. newscast coming to you from Arirang's news centre in Seoul. It's extremely good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this evening, the United States has temporarily deployed an additional Patriot missile battery in South Korea in response to North Korea's recent nuclear test and long-range missile launch. The U.S. military command in South Korea says an air defense battery unit from Fort Bliss, Texas, has been conducting ballistic missile training using the Patriot system at Osan Air Base south of Seoul. U.S. forces Korea would not confirm how long the new missile battery would be deployed at the base. The move comes ahead of talks next week to set up an even more sophisticated U.S. missile defense system known as THAAD. Officials have yet to set a specific starting date for those talks. U.S. Congress has overwhelmingly adopted legislation imposing a new raft of tough sanctions on North Korea. The bill, prompted by North Korea's recent provocations, has been sent to President Obama for approval. The House of Representatives passed the North Korea Sanctions Enforcement Act of 2016 in a 408-2 vote, just a couple of days after the Senate had approved it 96-0. The sanctions aim to deprive Pyongyang of the financial resources it needs to develop nuclear warheads and long-range missiles. The measures will blacklist anyone who is involved in, facilitates or contributes to North Korea's nuclear and missile programs. It also sanctions those who do business with Pyongyang connected to arms-related materials, the luxury goods trade, human rights abuses, cyber attacks or other illegal activities. South Korea is continuing its diplomatic efforts to make North Korea pay for its recent nuclear and missile provocations. Seoul's foreign minister has been holding talks on the matter with his Russian and U.S. counterparts in Germany. Connie Kim reports.
South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov have reaffirmed that North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile provocations are unacceptable. Holding a bilateral meeting on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference on Friday, the two ministers agreed on the need for a corresponding measure on Pyongyang's violation of international law. Yoon and Lavrov were also on the same page on strengthening cooperation to speed up the UN Security Council resolution on North Korea that's currently in the works. Meeting with his U.S. counterpart John Kerry separately, Minister Yoon emphasized the need for a terminating resolution that would leave North Korea with no choice but to abandon its nuclear weapons program. Kerry said the 5 members of the 6-party nuclear talks, excluding North Korea, should continue cooperation to show the international community is resolute on Pyongyang's nuclear issue. Kerry also expressed support for Seoul's shutdown of the inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex, calling it an important decision to pressure the North. The U.S. diplomat also made his stance clear to China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who was also at the conference. Kerry reiterated that China should exert influence on its longtime ally. Beijing's position of emphasizing dialogue rather than sanctions has been delaying the adoption of the UN resolution. China, on its side, has expressed opposition to the deployment of a THAAD battery on South Korean soil, saying it'll only deter regional peace. With Washington and Beijing unable to narrow their differences on the level of sanctions on North Korea, the resolution adoption is now taking longer than the previous 3 times Pyongyang conducted its nuclear test. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's ruling and opposition parties have been trading barbs over the government's decision to suspend operations at the jointly run Kaesong industrial complex in North Korea. A spokesperson for the ruling Saenuri party says the move was necessary to safeguard national security in the face of mounting provocations by Pyongyang. That spokesperson added that the closure might encourage North Korea to change its ways. The main opposition Minju party says the decision was counterproductive and harmful to long-term cross-border relations. The South Korean government shut the factory park this week in response to North Korea's recent nuclear test and long-range missile launch. Syria's President Bashar al-Assad has vowed to retake the entire country, but has warned that it could take a long time. In an exclusive interview with AFP, Assad said regardless of whether he could do it or not, it was a goal he's seeking to achieve without any hesitation. The Syrian president also said he backed peace talks, but negotiations do not mean his forces stop fighting terrorism. Now, backed by Russian airstrikes, Government troops have registered major advances in recent days, particularly in Aleppo province. This all comes as world powers have agreed to implement a cessation of hostilities in Syria in 1 week's time. Koreans' credit card spending on flights and other tourism-related costs keeps on rising. Figures from Korea's Credit Finance Association shows Koreans use their plastic to spend over $7.7 billion at travel agencies and on plane tickets in 2015. Compared to 2011, spending has risen more than 25%. The association attributes the rapid growth to the rising number of low-cost budget carriers, which are encouraging more people to take trips overseas. The Korea Tourism Organization says 19.3 million outbound trips were made last year. That's up more than 20% compared to the previous year. Now, a new study estimates Korea's healthcare spending will peak in the year 2060 at a staggering $280 billion. The National Health Insurance Service report says that figure is not that far away from Korea's total budget for this year, which stands at $320 billion. Now, these costs are directly related to Korea's rapidly aging population. As of 2014, the average medical bill for a senior citizen was 4 times more than Koreans under the age of 65. Government figures forecast that 40%, 4 out of 10 of Korea's population will be classified as elderly in the year 2060. Experts warn that if the amount of funds needed continues to balloon, it will start to pose a dangerous risk to health insurance finances. Now, Korean and American researchers have developed a sensor that can analyse brain injuries. Compared to existing sensors, the new wireless device offers patients a much safer and more convenient form of diagnosis. Oh Seong with the details.
If you've ever taken a hard blow to the head, you might look perfectly fine on the outside. But after some time, the shock can be enough to trigger a traumatic brain injury, or TBI, which could be fatal. To detect the kinds of microscopic changes that could be indicative of a serious injury, such as increased intracranial pressure, a sensor needs to be placed in the brain. But the method has its limitations.
With the wire sticking out of the brain, infections could develop. Also, because most sensors are fairly large, a bigger hole needs to be made in the skull to insert it.
To address these issues, a team of Korean and American scientists developed a new kind of sensor that dissolves on its own after tracking brain pressure levels. The sensor, which is just 2 millimeters wide, can reach the deepest parts of the brain and accurately diagnose even the smallest of injuries. And within 4 weeks, when the job is done, it completely dissolves within the body, so there's no need for surgical removal.
So, the dangers of an infection during surgery or injuring the brain while the sensor is being removed are significantly reduced. Also, because intracranial pressure is detected wirelessly, patients can get on with their daily lives without being tied down.
In fact, several sensors can be placed in the brain at once, capturing the general condition of the organ. This increases the chances of early detection for brain injuries, great or small. The technology was featured in Nature, an international journal for scientific research. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Now, staying with health-related news, and studies have shown that babies born to mothers who are depressed may be less active, less attentive and more agitated than babies born to moms who are not depressed. But how does depression in an expectant father affect an unborn child? Park Se-young has the details.
1 in 8 adults experiences depression. And according to a new study, having a mother or father suffering from depression increases the risk of preterm birth. Swedish researchers used data on over 360,000 newborn babies to assess if either parent had been diagnosed with depression or filled a prescription for antidepressants between the period of a year before conception and the end of a second trimester of pregnancy. A new diagnosis of depression in fathers increased the risk for very preterm birth by 38%. Among mothers, a diagnosis of depression was associated with a 30 to 40% increased risk of moderately preterm birth. Recurrent paternal depression was not associated with preterm birth, while recurrent maternal depression was linked with a 42% increase of risk. The study proves the importance of a mentally healthy and supportive father. According to the researchers, maternity care interventions should include the father, who can sometimes be overlooked. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Now, finally, before we go, we're going to take a brief look at the weather. And Korea's central region is seeing some on and off rain this evening, so if you head out, grab an umbrella. Also, be prepared for a steep drop in temperatures from tonight. The period of unseasonably mild conditions is coming to an end, for now at least. Seoul will see an overnight low of 0 degrees Celsius, and Sunday, will only reach 2 degrees Celsius in the Korean capital, and that is an 11-degree drop from today's high of 13 in the Korean capital. With that, let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that is all we have for now. Do enjoy the rest of your Saturday, wherever you're watching us, and stay tuned to Arirang TV. We'll be back with our next newscast. That's coming up at 10 p.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.